Alright, I know the last couple of weeks been kinda heavy, so hopefully this week we can move on to something a little less weighty. Alright, let's get into it. So when I started writing this episode, I was gonna start it off with a joke about how God created women and then everything fell apart. But not only would that be taking a cheap shot at the women who do so much for us and mean so much to us, but that would be misrepresenting the text, because that ain't what it say. So God put man and woman on this earth, made them responsible for taking care of it, gave them everything they needed, and only gave them one rule: don't eat from that tree over there. Now, if you like me, you done probably thought to yourself at least once, y'all just couldn't leave that tree alone. It wasn't but one tree. Y'all had other trees. Y'all tripping. Couldn't have been me. It couldn't have been me. And I think from the outside looking in, it's easy to say that, especially if you ain't got no kids. You ever want to convince a kid, heck, even an adult, to do something? Tell them not to do it. I was in the military for a while, and we had this saying that every ridiculous rule not to do something that should have been common sense was there because somebody did it, and then leadership had to be like, well, I guess we gotta tell them not to cook French fries in the motor oil now. And it never failed. Somebody would always come along and be like, y'all can't tell me not to cook my French fries in motor oil. It's like, it's just something in the core of us that make us want to lean toward doing what we ain't supposed to do, just because we ain't supposed to do it. Now, getting back to the fall, it's tempting to try and blame the woman for everything that happened. But if you read carefully what it actually says, you will get a different perspective. If you pay attention, you will notice that in verse 12 and 13, Eve says she was deceived. You know who wasn't deceived? Adam. And that ain't just my perspective. 1 Timothy chapter 2 is one of the most abused and misunderstood chapters in the Bible. And we're going to talk about that when we get there. But in one of the key verses, Paul co-signed the fact that Eve was deceived, but Adam wasn't. Paul, the dude who wrote like 25% of the New Testament. So what do we take from that? For whatever reason, Adam knew exactly what he was doing when he ate that fruit, and he did it anyway. Now, I think there's a version of this narrative that'll make us understand and maybe even sympathize with Adam. But regardless, the point is that he did what he did on purpose, which means ain't nobody got no justification for putting all the blame on Eve for the fall. So stop. Just stop. Y'all who out here talking that talk ain't fooling nobody with your undercover misogyny. So now that we got that out the way, let's get to the hardest question about this whole situation. I know y'all already thinking it, so I might as well tackle it head on. If God is so powerful and wise and all-knowing, why the heck would he create man, knowing man was gonna mess everything up? For a long time, that was the question I was the most nervous about having to answer. Also, if I'm honest with myself, I gotta acknowledge that that's a real good and real important question. So picture, you meet the woman/man of your dreams, whatever that means to you. Y'all both feeling each other. Over time, y'all end up getting married and have a few kids. Y'all watch the kids grow up, make all the mistakes that kids make along the way, but you see them make it to adulthood and have kids of their own. Y'all run into the typical bumps that come along with life, but overall, y'all happy. One day, you go to the doctor for a checkup, and the doctor tell you got something serious. Eventually, your body starts failing, and before you know it, you gotta face the reality that you gonna have to say goodbye to everybody you love. One day, you doze off in your hospital bed, and when you wake up, you realize it was all a dream. You can remember the details of 50 plus years with the woman/man and family you love. And with a wake up, it's all gone. You kinda shook by how real it was. But eventually you shake it off and get your day started. On your way walking into your job, you see the woman/man of your dreams. You thinking maybe you ought to run up to him, speak, do something, and then you pause. You already know how this whole thing ends. You don't want to lose it all again while you lay helpless in a hospital bed. Do you give up them 50 plus years of happy marriage? Do you give up your kids and your grandkids? I think most of us would do it all over again. I know I would. We already know that all it takes for God to create stuff is to say the word. So you know that his ability to imagine the outcome of what he about to say gotta be next level. And that's not just me making stuff up. He literally said that he know the end from the beginning. So what does all of this have to do with that hard question of why God created man if he knew he was gonna sin? Well, I gotta answer that question with another question. What does love look like? God says that he is love. We at least have some basic idea of what being all powerful looks like. And we sort of have an idea of what it means to be all knowing. But what does it mean to be all loving? I'd imagine what that looks like is for God to choose to create us instead of just allowing us to be a passing thought. Even though he knew in advance that in spite of being given everything, we would still screw it up so bad that the only solution would be for him to die for us. And I'm gonna let y'all sit with that thought. Until next week, peace, and I hope y'all people straight.